trusting your senses, though.
Yes, I am. But you know why I can trust my senses?
Because God.
No,
Be-
my
be-
question is, Mr. Batman, I'm sorry. This is a ponder. If I'm perceiving, as in, like, if I perceive that I'm going through tribulation, or we're going through tribulation, or, we're in the end times, is that true?
No, sir. No, sir. Again, in order for it to be true, it would have to be true in the real world, in the real time. It would have to be right now and right here. Sir, again, we know things to be true in the real world in real time. That's truth. Truth by its very nature is exclusive. Now, when it comes down to knowing things to be true in our perception, in our perceptual way of looking at things, our perception does not give us absolute truth. Our perception can just give us very limited examination of the truth that's right in front of us. That our perception cannot give us absolute truth. It is absolutely true in all times and all places. Do you know it's absolutely true that there's a place called Mars that exists out in our solar system that I can only observe as a tiny little dot in the sky? And it's also absolutely true that there's other galaxies in our universe that I've never observed and that we as a human species have never observed, but it's absolutely true that they are there. So how do you account for these absolute truth statements without an eternal, universal, and unchanging absolute God who makes those possible?
So, if our sense perception isn't 100% accurate as you're claiming, how can that be accurate to what you're saying?
Well, sir, again, our sense perception might be flawed, but we can generally rely on our senses because of the God that created our senses. You see, sir, if you do not know God, you have no justification for why your senses are interpreting the real world in real time accurately. But because there is a God, the God of truth, the God that wants us to know things that are true in the real time, in the real world, because there is such a God, we can know things to be true because he created our senses to measure and know and observe and taste and test the real world all around us. And because he wants us to know that, even those of us that have an invalid perception in some areas, some of us are colorblind, some of us have taste deficiencies, some of us can't smell things. But guess what? That doesn't take away from the fact that reality is still real. Our limited perception does not give us reality. The perfect perception of God gives us reality. Without that perfect perceiving mind of God, you cannot have reality. Because you got to admit, perception of reality happens in our mind. Now, if we know that perception of reality happens in our mind in a very limited fashion right in front of us, then we can extrapolate on that God's mind is the perfect perceiving mind that perceives all of his creation simultaneously. And that perfect perception is what gives us absolute authority, absolute truth, absolute morality. All those things come from that perfect perceiving, perfect prescribing mind of God.
So, if all things come from that God, then any question
Hello, I am Mr. Batman, and I teach science and apologetics for all ages. Repent or perish.